understand what this fight's all about.
That's right, Jessica. So listen, on Election Day, Democratic Congressman Chuy Garcia of Illinois announced his retirement, and he did so after the deadline to run for his congressional seat. But his chief of staff had been tipped off ahead of time. So just hours before the deadline, she filed the paperwork to run. So she will be the only Democrat running in the primary in an overwhelmingly Democratic district. Essentially, Congressman Garcia fixed it so his chief of staff would be his successor, depriving other candidates of an opportunity to run and depriving voters in his district of any real choice. Last Wednesday, Democratic Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez from Washington State took to the floor of the House to offer a resolution condemning Congressman Garcia's machinations. She said it was undemocratic, and all of this has ignited a firestorm of Democratic criticism. So here with us right now in an exclusive interview is Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. And Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. You accused Congressman Garcia of, quote, undermining the process of a free and fair election, unquote. It is very rare for a Democrat to so publicly call out a member of their own party. Why did you feel the need to speak up?
Because I believe election subversion is wrong no matter who's doing it. And I think that right now we're seeing a profound, very loud call from Americans for transparency and accountability. And it's part and parcel of that you don't just turn a blind eye to wrongdoing or unethical behavior when it's, politically convenient, that you do it consistently. And I did this on the first day that we were back after Representative Garcia had done this. And I just think it's really important that we are consistent. And whether it's politically convenient or not, it's not fun to call out a member of your own party, but I think it's important that we're consistent and answering, and we're loyal to the soil, we're loyal to our constituents, and say, election subversion is always wrong. That's not how we run things in this country, and that's not the party that I want to be a part of.
Did Democrats try to talk you out of doing this? What was the reaction of your fellow Democrats in the House?
One of the disturbing things was that, immediately after the news broke about how Chuy had basically chosen a successor, I saw a lot of members congratulating him on how clever and slick it was. And I think that galvanized me more to say that this is not something to be proud of or to emulate or copy, that we have to think critically about, what use is it to win an election at all costs, even your own integrity, if you are in that process destroying Americans' confidence in government? That's the thing. It's not a prize that's worth winning if you destroy the thing in the process.
One of the arguments from Democrats seems to be that Democrats need to be focused on the Epstein files and on high prices and on Trump's tariffs, and what you're doing is distracting from that. How do you respond to that argument?
Yeah, I think that it's I understand that Democrats want a unified message, but I also know that where I'm from, when you see things like this, it's not just about having affordable stuff or holding another team accountable. It's that we want leadership. We want a team that calls a spade a spade. And there are so many debatable things in politics today, but this seems really clear-cut to me and my community that this is not acceptable. And I've seen the way that, DC will turn you into a frog, and it will boil you alive if you do not make consistent and deliberate steps to stop that. And so I'm in my second term here. I didn't have elected office before this. I'm not a lawyer, but I know that when I see somebody subverting an election and choosing their successor, that's not what democracy is about, and that's not why I was sent to Congress.
Yeah, look, without question, what Congressman Garcia did stinks, and the voters got screwed without, taking a position on what kind of a politician he is or his successor will be. You are right on the facts, but there is just such reluctance of Democrats to criticize Democrats and Republicans to criticize Republicans. How much, if at all, were you influenced by what happened with President Biden last year and the fact that the DNC kept him away from any challengers during the primary process? There were no debates. There were efforts to keep other people off the ballots, and then, of course, after he dropped out, after the pressure following the debate, there was no contest at all to make Vice President Harris the nominee. Did that play a role in this at all?
Yeah, I think there's one school of thought that's pretty strong in D.C. that it's like the threat to democracy is so real that we have to make choices for people. That Americans aren't smart enough to choose their own representatives. And I think like that lack of confidence in voters, it is toxic. And it's not true. Like there are patriots, there are so many people who could hold these jobs and who would do well at them. But it can be so inward looking and just oriented around what you don't like. And look, like, I like Chewy. Like, I think he's like a nice guy. And it's even more important that when it's someone that, it can't just be the people that you don't like that you're willing to call out. You have to be willing to do it within your own family as well. And I believe that that kind of transparency and faith in voters is what will turn things around. That is how you walk away from authoritarianism, not by picking up that playbook, but by saying, no, like, this is a strong country still. And when we, when we trust American citizens to make a good choice, like, we get a better outcome than if these choices are made for them.
The attacks on you have been very tough and personal. One of your colleagues, Congresswoman Adelia Ramirez, criticized you for her, in her words, quote, going after a strong progressive Latino leader. For people who don't know, you also are Latina, Congresswoman Gluesenkamp-Perez, but there seemed to be an insinuation there that you were going after him because he was Latino and because he is progressive. What was your reaction to that?
Identity politics do not justify election subversion. Nothing justifies that. If you say that it's wrong, you have to say that it's wrong consistently, no matter who's doing it. This is not about, this cannot be like a inter-party fight. Like, that's not what this is about. You know, it is about confidence of whether we are going to choose to respect voters, whether we're going to operate with morality. And, you know, some people have said, like, you're a legislator, for God's sake, why don't you write a law? Well, A, like, election laws states. B, I can't think of every unethical thing and make it illegal. Like, men's hearts are ungovernable. And the line between good and evil runs right down the middle of every man's heart. So it's not just about legislating morality. That's a fool's errand. It's about a willingness to say, especially for the people that I love, especially in my own team, that, like, we have to have a standard that is unchanging. And, you know, there's so much, so many of the party fights are like, oh, well, like, Democrats are just going after Epstein because they want to hurt the president. Well, prove that that's not true. Say that we have a standard that's unchanging, that we are going to operate with integrity and with transparency in every case that we're presented with, not just when it's politically convenient, but always. And that's what I'm hoping to do. I'm hoping to be able to have a debate here about the merits of the case, the facts of the argument, and say that we have to walk away from a partisan fight, certainly an inter-party fight, and say there's a difference between right and wrong here, and that we're gonna, and, like, I don't think I'm better than anyone. Like, I'm not here to put myself, like, that is not true. But I also have an obligation to represent the values of my community. And, you know, a loyalty to the soil doesn't just mean that I care about timber and sea lions. It means that I care about calling a spade a spade.
Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. Jessica?
Thank you.
All right. Jake, thank you.